everyone. It is such an honor. Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here. I've learned a little bit about your society and the history, the prestige. So it really is an honor to be here. And the other thing I want to say is that this is the first double header that I've ever given between the two books. So hopefully it will go well. Give me some grace. But you guys get to be the recipients of that. So before I jump into the content, I have a few comments. One is that despite the confidence with which I'm going to be presenting research-based thinking to you, I want to very clearly say that nothing ever works for everyone. So a lot of times people talk about things as if they do, and they never give this caveat, but I think it's really important to make sure you know that even though I might suggest that what I'm presenting is true for most people, or the 70% under the bell curve, I would never expect it to work for everyone. I'm going to alternate between different words, exercise, physical activity, movement, but I just want to give you a heads up about that. And although the behavioral protagonist of this story is physical activity, I invite you to consider similarities and differences that exist with other healthy behaviors. And finally, my perspective is very different from all of yours. So I invite you to disagree and push back, and we'll have time to do that at the end of this. Very quickly, turn to your table mates, and I want you to answer this question. I'm going to give you 30 seconds. I believe that physical activity is primarily good for helping my patients do what? Go. Now, can people shout out? Let's hear some things. What'd you say? What? Mental health, everything. What else? What? Cancer. What else? Alzheimer's. Okay, that's great. It is good for a lot of things. So I wanted you to get your own perspective and biases out there before I shared mine with you. I want to tell you how I got into this talk. My guiding question since 1993 has been, why don't most people, why don't most patients, employees, clients sustain self-care behaviors like physical activity? And when I was getting my first master's degree in kinesiology, I had an opportunity to research physical activity benefits, psychological benefits among cancer survivors, people who'd been out of treatment about 4.5 years living normal lives. And we randomized our participants. One group got exercise, one group didn't. And lo and behold, after our 3 months of exercise was over, we found that the group that had been randomized to physical activity did improve in anxiety and depressive symptoms compared to the group that didn't. And I thought that was the end of the story. Part of our study design was to call people back about 10 weeks after our study had ended, give them the questionnaires again, and conduct focus groups with them, sitting around tables very much like the ones you're sitting around today. And I saw people smiling and laughing, and I thought, I was kind of young at the time, and I was naive, and I thought, wow, we didn't just do good research, we actually helped people in their lives. But I was wrong. Because I was shortly to discover that almost everyone had stopped exercising when our study had ended about 10 weeks before. And so, as the curious person that I was, I asked, why? Why would you stop exercising? And the people were like, Michelle, do you have all day? I have to work, I have families, I have aging parents, I have this, that, and the other to do. I don't have time to exercise. And I thought, wow, if people who faced a life-threatening illness don't feel comfortable prioritizing their own self-care, then we have a real problem in our society. And I'm one of these really fortunate people who literally had a light bulb go off in my brain. And what came to me at that moment of inspiration was, this is my problem, and I'm going to solve it. And so everything I've done since that time, almost 30 years, has been getting more education, and also conducting health coaching with individuals, iterating between the two, integrating the two, so I could understand not just the science and the research, what happens in the real world of people's daily lives. And what I'm going to share with you today is a lot of what I've learned in almost 3 decades of doing that. But I don't want to belittle the notion that change is hard and complex. And so in your counseling of patients, what I'm going to talk about actually, as Dr. Madison said, is something you can easily implement in your own practice, and we're going to talk about how to do that specifically, but it doesn't mean that behavior change is easy, because it isn't. So today, we're going to talk about how to create lasting exercise motivation, and it's a journey of science and discovery. So let's start with us, clinicians. Well, we've all probably seen this before. We've been taught and told to promote that exercise is medicine. At the YMCAs, they talk about exercise through diabetes prevention programs. People have learned over the decades that, you know, they can run to burn calories and get slim, and they can stretch themselves thin, too, on exercise equipment. And then, of course, there's back at the doctor's office. Research shows that when clinicians raise the need for exercise with patients, it's generally in the context of weight loss. So here's what's been going on. We've taught people to focus on, we've taught our patients to focus on what I'm calling the islands of distant goals. The island of weight loss, the island of getting fit, the lagoon of disease prevention, and the land of better health. And I contend that we have successfully sold this focus to people and patients. And how do I know this? Well, I'm going to share with you throughout this presentation some brief interviews that I conducted with people on the streets. This is not a scientific sample, okay? These are people, I and a cameraman, we were making some interviews to present at a National Physical Activity Congress. I think it was in 2016, maybe earlier than that. And we just wanted to talk to people about exercise. So this first question reflects why people exercise. We asked them, why do you exercise? And here's what they had to say. And I might need, oh, nope, I do need technical help to start this video.
Just the desire to stay healthy.
Probably to stay healthy.
Makes you healthier. Better health. Yeah, better health.
So when you ask people why they exercise, health is the most common thing people say. In fact, I collected data on this very question, and what we found was that 75% of respondents said they exercised either for weight-related reasons or health-related reasons. And that's just one study, but this reflects generally what research shows. If you ask people why they exercise, they say health or weight. Why? We've passed out binoculars as a field, right? And then we tell them, here's your boat, go exercise. And at the beginning, patients are super motivated. They really believe they can get there. But it's hard. Rowing is really hard. Exercise is really hard. And those islands, they looked kind of close, but they're looking a little further away. And pretty soon, most don't make it and give up. They're dead in the water. What's the problem here? Anyone want to take a guess Any brave soul want to take a guess? What do you think the problem is here? Oh, well, that's one way to look at it. I'm not surprised you said that. No, it's something else. What? You can't see the fruit of your labors. I'm really sorry, but that is getting closer to where I'm going. There's the problem. It's the binocular problem. See, what's happened is that we've taught people to focus on the islands of distant goals, and when they're using the binoculars, what happens with the binoculars? They look really close. So I'm going to go back to the street interviews to kind of talk about where this is going, and we asked, is being physically active a daily priority for you? Okay.
Is being physically active a daily priority for you?
No,
No. May I ask why not?
I'm still working. That's more important.
Have you ever thought about starting?
Only my doctor has.
Is being physically active a daily priority for you?
Well, we'd like it to be, yes. But we don't actually always exercise every day. Yes.
Okay. Can you tell me why it's not a daily priority?
Time,
Time crunch.
working,
Yep.
kids stuff.
Finding the right time.
Right.
Thinking back, what motivated you to start when you were active on a daily basis?
Oh, it was always just,
Thing
yeah,
to do, just part
yeah,
of, part of what we did, yeah.
just the desire to stay healthy.
Well, he does, but I have an office job. I drive to work in the dark. I sit in an office with no windows. I sit in front of a computer all day, and I have to force myself to get up and go somewhere. I come home in the dark, and then I don't really feel like being active.
Okay.
But I know
okay.
I should.
Why do you think you should?
Oh, because I know that my body needs it.
What motivated you to start when you were doing it this summer?
I promised my physician that I would try to lose 20 pounds.
But people do value better health, and not just physicians. If I'm talking to a group of people, hundreds of people, and I ask people, how many people value good health? Almost everyone would raise their hands. But here's the problem, and I'm going to show you some data that explains it. We looked at why people valued exercising and through qualitative research. And in general, we coded the data, and we found that people generally exercise for 4 reasons that are listed in the columns underneath. For weight and appearance-related reasons, for current health reasons, for healthy aging reasons, and then for their daily quality of life. But we also collected data over a year to see how much exercise people did. And what we found is that the people who are exercising in the orange column for daily quality of life did between 20 and 32% more exercise over the year than people who said they valued exercising for health and weight. So despite equally and highly valuing health and weight and quality of life, where the rubber meets the road is what you do, and you can see there's a difference. And there's a gap between what people intend to do and say they value and what they actually do. So to understand this, I want to pull a quote from another qualitative study I did. And this study looked at active people, low active people, and high active people. And this is a quote from a low active person. Exercising is a high priority just because I know my family history, my genes, and all that stuff. And I bet you recognize a comment from your patients, maybe even yourselves. But it's not a high enough priority for me to actually ... And this is the problem. We know it's good for us. We know our genetic pool. We know we're at risk of things, and maybe we already have diabetes, but it's hard to make it a high priority. This reflects the gap between what people value and intend and what they actually do. And of course, this reflects what decades has shown exists between people's intentions and their behavior. So let's go back to the binocular problem. When our patients are looking through the binoculars, the islands look very close. But when they put the binoculars down, all of a sudden, the islands get further away, and this does speak to the feedback that you were talking about. There's something very important between our patients on the land and the islands of distant goals that they want to reach. There's a gap there. Well, what's in this gap? Right now is in the gap. And now are things like the big project at work, and our family's needs, and the currents of conflicting obligations, and our social commitments. Hey, we're having a barbecue, come on over and do it. Don't go exercise. And of course, there's also the activities that are just more fun. And the winds of shifting priorities always blow strong. So right now is what gets in the way of here and the islands of distant goals. So the real question is, how do we close this gap? Well, we have to understand what we're really after. And I propose to you that we shouldn't even be bothering if we're not going to care about achieving sustainable change. And in a way, in my field of behavior change over the 3 decades, the last 2 decades, most people weren't talking about sustainable change. They were just talking about behavior change. But if we're going to try to get patients to become more physically active or adopt other healthy behaviors, we really should do it from the get-go with the mindset of sustainable change. How do I achieve this, and what does it consist of? Well, it consists of consistent decisions right now, and now, and now, and now, and now. And that is a very different proposition than behavior change. So what are some common decisions related to physical activity that our patients make? Well, are we leaving for the spinning class or not? Are we continuing to work, try to get our email box down to, I try to get it down to 100 and then I'm happy, but some people get it down to 0 every day, or do we get those steps in? Or do we wake up to lift weights or press snooze? So those are just 3 out of millions of decisions that people can make regarding physical activity. So we need to think about how do we bridge this gap, and I propose we can do that by understanding how people make daily decisions. And to do this, we have to know very broad things about the brain. That we have 2 information processing systems. One system is based in logic, and the other is based in emotional experiences. And when I say emotional experiences, I'm talking about affect, which is kind of a psychological, jargony term, but it really just means feelings. Basically, how do we feel? Happy, sad? In general, these systems behave in very different ways. The logic-based system is analytical and rule-based. It's verbal, compared to the affective or feeling-based system being intuitive, being experiential-based, being nonverbal. The logic-based system is slow compared to the other system being fast, and so fast that we make decisions automatically without even realizing it. And the logic-based system takes effort, whereas the affective or feeling-based system is effortless. And to really compare these 2 systems, we want to understand that the logic-based system necessitates self-control often, and it's based in the future, thinking about future decisions and goals, whereas the affective system is based and motivates us unconsciously right now. And I'm sure many of you know this is a very broad, gross overview, if you will, of these 2 systems. So we have to know, well, what does the research say? If we care about causing decision-making right now, what does research say about what drives decision-making? And there was a study published a while ago that looked at this. It was not about physical activity per se, but the implications are relevant for this conversation. And what they wanted to know was, which has more weight about my choice right now? Is it my feelings about what's going to happen right now? Or is it the value of what's going to happen right now? And what they found was that the closer in time to our decisions, the closer 10 minutes from now, what's going to lead me to decide to do it in 10 minutes, or right now I have to leave? Which is more impactful, feelings or the value or function of that choice? And what they found is the closer in time that we are to the outcome of now, the more that our feelings beat out the value. And I'm going to give you a specific example. On New Year's Eve, so many people make resolutions, and they might start a diet, they might join Jenny Craig, they might, get a Peloton bike and sign up for that. And that would reflect, they have some reason or value, logical value of doing that. But the science suggests that how they feel about actually doing the behavior right now is much more influential than their reason for doing it on New Year's Eve. Does that make sense? Given this, how do we solve the binocular problem? Well, we've taught people to focus on logical future goals. But research in behavioral economics clearly shows us that human beings are much less motivated by logical rewards in the future than the immediate rewards that they experience. So the reason why it's a binocular problem, the reason why we haven't been more effective as a society and in our exercise counseling with individuals and maybe with our own physical activity and exercise is because our approach hasn't been more affective or feeling-based. So what have we been missing? And there is a clue there. I don't know if you see it, but there's a clue. Let's take away the binoculars and show patients and ourselves what's been right underneath our feet this whole time. What do you think is in the treasure? Raise your hand.
Feel better now.
Feel better now, okay. What else? Well, you kind of just ruined the whole thing. No, I'm not kidding. You're just ahead of the game. Can we play this video? Is being physically active a daily priority for you and other people? Go ahead. Oops, I have to go back.
Is being physically active a daily priority for you?
Yes.
How long have you been doing it?
I've been doing it for decades. I try to swim about a half hour, 5 days a week.
How do you feel it affects you day to day?
It definitely keeps me enthused, and I just feel good.
If you miss a few days, how does it feel when you're not active?
I feel almost depressed.
And how does it affect you, like, day to day?
Oh, at work, I feel much better since I started. Better everything, and just easier to get up, easier to do everything.
How do you feel on days when you're not active or you've maybe gone without for a little bit?
Oh, it's rough. I don't feel good. I feel, just like crap, I guess.
So, as this gentleman so astutely said, the treasure chest is I feel better in everything. It keeps me enthused. Or positive affect right now. So, this is a comment from a high active person in that qualitative study I showed you. And this is what she said. I always feel better when I exercise. I don't even see it as exercise. So the treasure chest is exactly that. It's feeling better right now. But inactive individuals might not know that movement can help them feel better right now. Actually, I want to just say, my slides are off, just so you know. What I'm seeing here is not what's up there. Thank you. Oh, those technical problems that you have to deal with. This is a really key point. Inactive individuals may not know that exercise and physical activity can help them feel better right now. So why would that be? Because active people have very different experiences than inactive people. And let's look at some quotes from another study. Here's what an active person had to say. Physical activity has enormous impact. And if I'm not exercising one day, I notice that I don't feel as well as I normally do. That reflects just what the two gentlemen said in the video. And an inactive person said, and this is about walking, I'm not a walker, so I really don't know fully what it feels like to be one. I've heard everyone else in the group talk about what walking feels like, and it helps them feel better. But if you're not doing it, so someone who isn't doing it doesn't get it. In fact, research shows that it's only active individuals who use physical activity as a way to enhance their mood. On top of not knowing about it, and I'm sure you get this a lot in your offices, inactive individuals might experience physical activity as feeling bad. Here's what happens. You know, we give them their boat. We tell them to row really hard, get their heart rate up. No pain, no gain. And then we have TV shows where we have people screaming, do it harder, right? No wonder they feel the burn. And they shortly quit. Here's a comment from a low active participant, and it's no wonder she said this. It makes me really resentful when I do exercise now. I have such a bad attitude. Contrast that from a low active participant. I have such a bad attitude when I think about exercising compared to the high active that said, I don't feel as good, or I don't even consider it exercise, I feel so good. Why does this matter? It matters because the intensity of physical activity influences people's affective responses during physical activity, or how they feel while they're moving. And to explain this, I want to show you some data from Patty Ekakakis, who's at Iowa State, and his research in this area was really the leading edge many decades ago. And I'm going to show you through data that as people exercise at higher intensities, they feel worse. The vertical axis represents how people are reporting how they feel. Lower is worse. And the horizontal axis is the further we go this way, the higher intensity people are exercising. And as you can see from the chart, that as people go further up in the numbers, their feeling states worsen. Now, some people would say, and I've heard this a ton with the people that I've been coaching with decades, yeah, I don't like how it feels when I exercise, but I feel so great afterwards. I just need to push myself through to do it. And as someone who has been a researcher in this field and interacts with professionals in the health spectrum and the fitness spectrum, in the corporate well-being, this is a very common thing. If you just push through it, that should be motivated enough to get to the other side. But guess what? Research shows that it's how people feel during, not afterwards, that predicts physical activity. So it's logical to think that if we just get to the other side, we'll be motivated. The research, that doesn't pan out. That's not true. Let's think about how positive affect, when people like to exercise, how it actually works. Research shows that it actually influences our choices outside of our awareness. And first, I want to show you another example of the interviews, and then I'm going to show you some data. So if you could play this video, that would be great.
Is being physically active a daily priority for you?
Oh yes, definitely. Every day, I try to get to the gym.
Why do you make it a priority?
Just for health reasons, and that's about it. Just trying to stay healthy.
What do you feel like it does for you staying healthy?
Oh, I have more energy. I feel better. Everything's just a lot better being healthy.
Do you see what's going on here? He thinks he's exercising for health. But when we ask him what that really means, he talks about the immediate positive experiences he has right now. And in fact, research that looked at how much physical activity people did over, I think it was a 3-month period, showed that they were specifically interested in the immediate reasons that benefits people get from exercise versus the future benefits that they get. And they showed that it was only the immediate benefits that predicted how much they exercised. So just like the gentleman in the last video, even when people believe they're exercising for a future goal, research suggests, as well as decades of my experience talking to people about that it's the immediate benefits that are really motivating most people, and they don't know. Again, nothing is true for everyone, but I believe this is true for many, if not most people. Now, to bring this home, I'm going to share a quote with you from Jane Brody. And I know most of you probably know who she was, even though she just recently retired from the New York Times. She was the original first health journalist. And she interviewed me many years ago about my research, and then I read about our interview in the New York Times, and here's what she said. If you ask me why I exercise, weight control may be my first answer, followed by a desire to live long and well. You can imagine that I started sweating when I read that because it completely goes against what I've been telling you, right? And what I've been promoting. But that wasn't the end of what she said. And you can tell that she said something else. You're shaking your head. But that is not what gets me out of bed to bike to the Y every day. It's how these activities make me feel more energized, more productive, and yes, happier, better able to smell the roses and deal with the inevitable frustrations of daily life. If I bump into you on the street, Michelle, and you ask me why I exercise, even after you interviewed me and I learned all about this new research, I'm still going to say I'm doing it for health and weight. But if you ask me why I decide to get up in the morning to bike to the Y, I'm going to tell you something completely different. So we can think about the first level as the island of distant goals, and the bottom as the treasure chest. And as a society, we have been socialized around the world to think about and approach healthy lifestyle behaviors like physical activity for aiming to reach the islands of distant goals. But that is not what drives daily decision making. So the question is, how can we help inactive patients discover the positive experiences in the treasure chest? And I also know, I am assuming that actually as a group, and this is an assumption and I could be wrong, that you are probably a more active population of clinicians than clinicians at other places. Just because you live in such a beautiful place, I'm assuming that maybe you guys are more active and gals are more active. I don't know if this is true, but there's a real problem in healthcare with inactivity. So it's important for us to take care of ourselves as well through this. So what I'm saying is we need to reframe exercise and rebrand it away from medicine to daily treasures of positive experiences that people can have. We need to give our patients and ourselves permission and our communities to move in ways that feel good, even at low intensity. Now, I know that especially in a healthcare setting, concerns exist about this recommendation. And it's existed since I've been talking about this idea because people feel like, well, my patients won't necessarily get the benefits they need to manage their conditions. And this is a valid concern. But here's the deal. Research shows that any movement is definitively better than no movement. And this is so definitive that in 2018, a new recommendation, new guidelines in the United States came out for Americans that removed the 10-minute duration bout requirement, that used to be there. It used to be people could accumulate physical activity throughout the days, but officially it had to be at least 10 minutes. Now, that 10-minute bout criterion was actually not based on data that supported it, but there were limitations in how people used to measure physical activity, and they could only measure physical activity that was 10 minutes or over, so that's why it was there. So thank goodness this has liberated everyone from saying that something is better than nothing, everything counts, look for every opportunity to move and choose to do it. So the concerns of people who feel like my patients need to exercise at a certain intensity for a certain duration for it to be valuable and worth doing, we'll talk more about that too in my next presentation. The other thing I want you to consider for anyone who's concerned about this is that we're talking about how to create sustainable physical activity. And the research I've been showing you clearly shows what leads to sustainability. So if you want to create sustainable change in your patients, you need to care about how they feel while they're exercising, and you have to care about it being realistic in their daily lives. So let's talk about how we can rethink exercise counseling in clinic. We need to take away the binoculars. We need to stop focusing on exercise as medicine, because guess what? As you know, the original metaphor for medicine doesn't have such a high adherence rate, right? But the field in physical activity is actually using a failed metaphor to promote exercise, which is kind of funny when you think about it. We are used to prescribing physical activity in very logistical ways. How many days? How long is your session? How many reps? How many minutes? What are you going to do? Let's shift away from logic and future goals, which we have decades of experience doesn't work for most people. And let's move to a new exercise prescription. And we're going to work with it in a minute, but I just want to show you what we're going to work with. This exercise prescription is different, and I want to share a comment that I got from a family medicine practitioner after he went through a similar presentation as you are. And he emailed me afterwards, and this is what he said. I have had several conversations with patients in the last few weeks where we talk about your principles of adopting a change or behavior because it makes them feel good today. And I could see the light bulb go off, and it makes so much sense to them. You've also helped me personally as I try to eat a healthier diet. I can't tell you how many emails from clinicians I get just like this. Because while this is simple and may seem silly, it's so simple and common sense, it's profound. It has a profound influence on how patients receive the information, where it touches them, and whether they're interested or not. So, take out your Choose to Move. It's one page. Here's how we're going to do this. I don't know if everyone, I'm hoping that people are going to pair up. So that's the first task. Figure out who you're going to partner with. So you alone, maybe you could join, unless you don't want to, if you don't want to, because of COVID stuff, don't feel like you need to. So I want the people who are pairing up to figure out who's going to be the clinician and who's going to be the patient. I'm going to give you a minute to do that. Okay. Now, here's how we're going to start. Now, clinician, you better be compliant, okay? How'd that feel when I told you to do that? It didn't feel too good, right? Okay, so I'm going to walk you through this, okay? So that just to make it easy. Your first step is to explain the research that we just talked about. And if you look at the subtitle of Choose to Move, it's Move to Optimize Vitality and Enjoyment. So I want you to explain the research. You can ask your patient, are you regularly active? Hopefully the patient says no and that they don't like it. That's your task as a patient. You can be a tough patient if you want, but not too tough. So the clinician talks about having a positive experience and if they're open to trying something new. So that's the first part. Go to it. All right, I want to check in. What was that? Can anyone share the experience you had? Was it hard? Was it hard to put together? Was the patient giving you a hard time? Can anyone share like what that first component was like? Was it easy? It was easy. Great. So this is part of the new counseling protocol, is we want to educate people. Now, here's the deal. Education, as you know, doesn't get to sustainable change and often doesn't even get to change at all. But people have learned and believed completely different approaches to being physically active, and those approaches set most people up to fail. So what I didn't tell you is part of that conversation would also include explaining that we've been taught to exercise at high intensities. We've been taught, to do it for long durations. Research shows that doesn't lead most people to exercise. Now, again, here's the caveat you can say to your patient, especially if you know that patient lives with a marathoner. Nothing is true for everyone. So some people love to kill themselves with exercise, just not most people. So we want to share that research with them and then explain that there are all these positive experiences that you can have. Then the next part, clinician, let's assume that you got buy-in from your patient and they said they were open to talking more about it. This is the prescription pad. The next part of it is focused on asking the patients, what positive experiences do you personally want, if you could, from physical activity? So the way we start isn't by talking about what activity they're going to do. We actually start by asking them, how do you want to feel in an ideal world from exercising? And as you can see, this isn't a full list of benefits, but there's less anxiety, there's relaxed, there's less stress, there's better mood, there's connection, there's clearing my mind. So excitement, competition, there's so many different benefits that people get, but you could just show them this short list and ask them which ones they would want to have. So go ahead, clinician, and talk to your patient and ask them which of these would they like to have, and maybe ask why they want to have them. okay. How was that different? Can anyone tell me how that was different than what they might have done in the past? I know this is an engaged group, so I know someone will share with me. Or maybe it wasn't different. What? Focusing on the now. Yes, absolutely. And as a patient, even though you're really not a patient in this situation, how did it feel to be spoken to about these benefits? Can any patient share with me what they noticed? Yeah. Can you stand up? Ask for his preference. Absolutely, yes. No, that's what this is about. And it's starting with the experiences that people are going to get right now. So part of the conversation could also include, guess what? A lot of times people assume that if they can push through their a disdainful experience with exercising, that they get this feel-good feeling and that is enough. And you can tell them the research says that absolutely doesn't work for most people. So this is all to get you thinking about a new way to counsel that's based on the science, not convention. The exercise is medicine prescription, it is well-meaning, but it is not based on science. It's based on a dose-response benefit of physical activity. It is not based on how to get people to create changes that can last. That's really important to know. So then, this is the heart of this, or this is after the heart, if you will. Now you ask them, if someone said they wanted to have more enjoyment or fun, or they wanted to have less anxiety in their life, ask them which physical activity will help you realize one or both of those benefits. Go ahead, clinician, and ask that question. Then patient, think about which behavior will help you realize that. All right, so the most important thing, the thing that's turning, well, there's a lot of things that is turning the prescription on its head with this. Part of it is emphasizing the value, first and foremost, of the immediate positive affective experiences that people can have. But it's also asking people to pick those before you even talk about physical activity. The hook for lasting change is the positive affective experiences. So let's get people to identify how they want to feel in their daily life, what's missing from their daily lives, and then get them to hook physical activity to that. Now, I'm not going to take the time to go over the rest of this with you guys, but just to say that asking them to what would be realistic, asking people to try something one time and to try to notice how they feel. And honestly, in some research I do, we put this kind of information in the electronic medical records so that other people can ask about it. The best way is you want these new systems to be integrated and talked about in consistent ways across providers. And here's the final question: how can I support you in this? And then, of course, you follow up with them. You write that in the electronic medical record, or you take I have a clinician out west who uses this and then takes a picture of it and attaches it to the electronic medical record so it's there the next time they see them. So this is a new way of thinking, and as we wind down, and we only have a couple of minutes, I want to know, and now I want to just kind of open this up to opportunities and challenges and pushback from anyone about these ideas. So maybe I'll thank you for your attention, and I'll do that. Thank you. And now I'm going to go back in the little minutes we have. What are your questions? What are you concerned about?
We'll do this the same as before. If you can come up to one of the microphones, or if you don't want to get up, raise your hand and I'll come to you.
So as this has been implemented in your research, was the amount of time spent doing this a concern that clinicians had, and did that sort of pan out? Was that a difficult thing?
So that's a really good question. I have not researched this particular protocol. It's based on me putting together a new protocol. I can tell you that from clinicians who use this, what I have heard is that they have patients fill this out, so there's less active counseling while the clinician is writing up prescriptions and other things that they need to do. And then when the patient is done, they discuss it and it doesn't take too much time. So if you're going to actively counsel a patient based on the old protocol, I don't think this would add too much time. Another thing to do to be very efficient, and I love systematic efficiencies, is have your office type up some benefits of physical activity, maybe give this to a patient ahead of time, or type up an overview of that you want to talk about exercise in different ways based on what new science says, and then it will make it even quicker. But that's a really important, of course, that's a really valid concern. And I do need to research this, so if anyone wants to volunteer for me, let me know, and we can create a study. Yes?
Just to give you some context, I work in a pretty rural area.
Yes.
And have a pretty aging population. Most of them are overweight. One of the things that I might see as a barrier for me is that I can present this to people and they say, that sounds really nice, I can feel better today if I move, but my knees are so bad that I really just feel like I can't do anything. I can't walk, I can't get on the treadmill. Do you have any suggestions on working with those types of patients?
Yeah, and that's a really tough population. And if they're in a rural area, there isn't going to be a swimming pool necessarily that would be easy on the joints. So, I mean, of course it depends if the knee pain is, from rheumatoid arthritis or if it's from extra weight. And, there's no perfect answer, because being overweight in a way that causes knee pain is truly an issue. What I would do in that case is I would want to get them off their feet, and I would want to get them a stationary bike. And I think those are less costly, but these things matter to people. I would ask people I would give them permission to walk, to get up and walk for a minute and sit down, or to go to their mailbox or down their driveway and back, and to let them feel that that's good enough. We know from research that if people anticipate something is going to be painful, then it is going to be painful. And I'm not saying it isn't really painful, but what we now know about the brain and the way new theories of exercise participation emphasize how important people's past experiences are. They brand exercise and influence how people feel and think about it, about anticipating doing it while they're doing it. So part of the answer is to help them learn how to rebrand exercise in their mind by giving them permission to do very little, so little that it might not hurt, even if it's standing up and sitting down. We want to help them retrain their brains and their experiences. And again, these people aren't going to become, marathon runners. That's not the goal. Our goal has got to be, this is true. In this case, our immediate high priority, top priority goal in a hierarchy of goals is to help people feel more competent, and that it's not as painful by giving them very little bits. I call it exercise kindergarten. We want people to play and have absolutely no goals and be able to talk about it with you in your next appointment, or have a care coordinator follow up and say, hey, how was it walking for that minute? Did it feel any better? So your goal is to change their experience and perceptions, and that is necessary to get to the next level. Does that help? And I know that I'm at the end of my time, so now I'm really going to thank you for your attention. I hope you have a great lunch, and I'll see you afterwards.